Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan. Today we're going to be diving into what is becoming one of my favorite craft distilleries. And it's because they're doing what I think craft distilleries are supposed to do. They're supposed to innovate, they're supposed to push boundaries, but also you want them to do it successfully and not be something that's weird, offbeat, and maybe unpleasant to drink. This is a distillery that's, I guess the way that I would describe it, I would liken it to, you think of the way that Islay does Scotch. You know, you've got your different whiskey regions in Scotland, but Islay, the island of Islay, is really known most for things like having heavily peated smoked, peat smoked scotches. So they get really campfirey, as opposed to like a sweet and fruity, Highland Scotch, or those honey and biscuit Speyside scotches. It sort of takes on an identity of its own, and Islay's sort of recognized for that. Well, what Rockfilter Distillery is doing with their whiskey is similar in that regard, where I think they're almost like the Islay of American whiskeys, because they are smoking a lot of their grains, and you tend to get a lot of these like wonderful campfire notes, but they're doing it with things like cherry wood, so it's got this bright fruity sweetness to that campfire note. So I'm going to dive into some more of their products today and let you know what I think about them. Sound good? So I've covered the Red Ryder Rye from them before on the channel, and I loved it. I thought it was delicious. I've actually got a bottle of it on the way to my house right now. So quick refresher, Rockfilter Distillery is in Minnesota. The distillery is just a real small operation, not a very big team. The guy that started it is a vet. He served, and so a lot of their stuff on their website has this great sort of tongue-in-cheek humor to it, like, hey, he went from a combat zone to the American corporate world. Both of those sucked. Now we're doing distillation. That's pretty cool. Stuff like that, so which I appreciate a healthy dose of sarcasm. But he's living the simple life now, farming, making whiskey, selling whiskey. I like it. The two things we have here are the Fence Jumper and the Black Hammer. The Fence Jumper is 51% corn. Not just any corn, it's Oaxacan green corn, which is unique to the area. And then 49% of the mash is cherry wood smoked rye grains, specifically winter rye. So very simple mash bill there, 51-49, but different takes on that traditional mash bill. And that one is 94 proof. It's named the Fence Jumper because apparently their Oaxacan green corn was growing, and they lost some of their yield because some of their animals decided to hop the fence and sample the grains, and gave it their seal of approval. So their write-up says, originally tasted and approved by the bold herd, a rogue contingent of our livestock violated a fence line to sample the emerald ears of our rare Oaxacan green corn. Lesson, good fences make more bourbon. Like I said, I like their sarcasm. The Black Hammer, the second one we'll be tasting today, is at cask strength, so it's a little bit higher in the proof department. But this one, the mash bill is 100% corn. It is a corn whiskey. But a third of the corn was smoked with cherry wood again. So it's sort of their thing there, right? And that's 120.2 proof. So that one's a lot hotter. So now you know a little bit about who they are and what they're doing, what makes their whiskey unique. Let's get in on it, shall we? We'll start with the lower proof here with the Fence Jumper Bourbon. Now, the Red Ryder Rye that I covered on the channel earlier, that one is applewood smoked, but this one is cherry wood smoked. I happen to have some cherry wood on hand because I use wood chips to smoke some of my old fashions. There's some cherry wood right here for that exact purpose. So I wonder if we can sense any consistency here between the wood chips themselves and the nose on these whiskeys. It's like sweet mesquite barbecue sauce or something like that. That's the way the cherry wood smells. I love it. I gotta say, the nose of this smells like a semi-smoky rye whiskey, even though it's technically a bourbon. 51% of that Oaxacan green corn in here. But it's bright and crisp with a little bit of that campfire note in there as well. You get like those Werther's Originals butterscotch candies on the nose too. Just a light and bright caramel sort of a note to it. And sort of like that barbecue pit smoke on the nose as well. I love it. And there's that harvest dustiness that I got on the Red Ryder Rye. I'm getting on this too, which I love that note. I love autumns in the Midwest. When harvest season comes around and you get that, you go through the farm areas and the countryside and you get a lot of that dusty quality in the air. Reminds me a lot of that, which I certainly appreciate. I want to say almost like a little bit of a nutmeg note on this nose too. That's great. Let's try it. It is so grain forward to me, that smokiness throughout all of it, but it's a smokiness that is, it's way different than that peat smoke you're used to with your Islay scotches, which I got plenty of them up on my shelf. This is like American Midwest bonfires, man. One of my best friends growing up, his family lived on a farm, and I knew him through church. We went to the same church together, and a lot of Sundays I would just go home with his family instead of going home with my family. They'd come get me later on that Sunday evening, but I would spend like my whole Sunday after church, I'd be back at their farm. They had a dog, cornfields, silos, barns, the works, and I'd be doing chores. We'd wrap up everything with a nice bonfire outside. Hey, just grab what you could find, toss it on, keep that fire burning. This takes me back to my childhood being on the farm, doing just farmhand chores for a couple of bucks with my friend and his family. Grabbing bags of feed, taking them to the animals, all that stuff. Being in those barns, those dusty barns. Man, this is like Midwest farm culture and bourbon collided in just a fantastic way. But at the same time, this one is lower proof, like I said, so it's less of a shock to your palate. So if you wanted to sort of try it out and ease your way into it, I think the fence jumper would be the way to go, because it's a little more timid with it. It's not just going to shock your palate and overwhelm it with things that you're not used to tasting in an American whiskey. But it's sweet and nutty too. I think of like trail mix, dried fruits, mixed nuts. And for it being 49% rye in the mash, it's not overly spicy. There's a little bit of a spice note to it, but it's certainly far from being the most prominent tasting note in that sip. Sweet and smoky. I think like barbecue ribs come to mind. That could be because I had smoked barbecue ribs yesterday. Maybe that I'm like, this is making me want to visit the leftovers that are in the fridge. If I could knock one thing about this, the one thing I would knock is I would say I want a little bit more of that butterscotch note that we got on the nose to be a little bit more present on the palate. Because you get a lot of that crisp and clean qualities from the rye itself. And then smokiness is definitely coming through from the cherrywood smoked grains. But the corn itself, I just want a little bit more of some of that, those base notes of just a little bit of those rich caramels and butterscotches to be a little bit more present on the palate. But otherwise, this is delightful, and I'm thoroughly enjoying sipping on it. Let's move on to the next one. This is the Black Hammer. This is the heavy hitter of the day here. And you can tell just on the color alone, it reminds me of cognac, where it's sort of got this maroon, deep maroonish color in there too, along with the brown. So again, this is 100% corn whiskey. A third of the grains were smoked with cherrywood. And the nose almost gives me like an old Jack Daniels vibe. The farmhand, dusty barn note that we got, that I've gotten on all the other products I've had from them, very present here. I mean, it's a hallmark staple, component of what makes their whiskey. So that is 100% here, and I love that note. But I'm also thinking of like apple fritters on the nose. Sweet and bready. Love me a good apple fritter. There's heat on the nose, but there's not spice, which is a little different from the last sip we had. But there's a dark robustness to it, where I feel like it does have, on the nose alone, it's got some base end to it. I think of like one of the things that comes to mind is actually like bacon fat. Apple, campfire, a little bit of bacon fat, lots of grain on the nose. That's pretty fun, actually. Let's try it. Cheers. Man, is that different. I love it. So I grew up just north of Indianapolis, which if you are familiar with Indiana at all, north of Indianapolis, you're like, there's nothing there. That's the point. It is all fields and farmland. That's just in between Fort Wayne and Indianapolis. That's all it is just farmland, basically. Pocketed with small towns, with old school Midwest town centers, just the town square, with a courthouse in the middle. They all look cookie cutter the same. This just makes me feel like I'm home again. Farm country Midwest. Yeah, short drive south, I'd be in downtown Indianapolis. Grew up going to Pacers games, watching the Colts play, going to Monument Circle and walking along the canal. But then north, east, and west of me, all farm country. You would not guess on the palate alone that this is just a corn whiskey. That campfire smoke, the harvest, particulates in the air, those are the notes that are most prevalent on this. And the sweetness is subtle, right? But it's not just like a white sugar cane sweetness or candy or confectionery sweetness. It's more like a rounder, more robust, basey sweetness you get on molasses and caramels. A chewier sweetness. This, by the way, MSRP is 75 bucks, I think. 70 to 75 is what I was seeing it listed for. And it's pretty freaking good, guys. It's pretty freaking good. So here's the thing. It's like really hard to, I guess, describe this because Rockfilter is doing something that I've not seen any craft distillery do. Their profile is so unique. You put it in a lineup with literally anything on my shelf, I will immediately pick it up and be like, that's a Rockfilter product right there. That's what I love about a craft distillery that has a very solid and rooted sense of identity. There are so many craft distilleries out there that are basically just trying to reinvent the wheel. They're like, we'll do what the legacy distillers are doing. We're just gonna, here's our bourbon, here's our wheated bourbon, here's our rye. And it's like, listen, man, you have so much stiff competition when it comes to just doing what legacy distillers are doing. Like, who's gonna pay $20 extra for a small craft distillery bottle of 4-year-old bourbon whiskey when you can get Wild Turkey 101 for 25 bucks at, your local grocery store. It's so hard to stand out against that. How do you compete against that? And a lot of distilleries really struggle to compete. They have their sort of local market. They have to open up a restaurant and sell a lot of neutral grain spirits and vodkas and gins in order to pay the bills. Now, I don't know a dang thing about Rockfilter's financial situation, but I firmly believe that if more people drank this, it would be something that someone would want to have at least on their shelf because it is unique, it is singular, it is tasty. This is something that there's a lot of things that are really unique, but you wouldn't really reach for them often. You're like, well, that's really offbeat. It's weird. It's interesting. If somebody comes over and be like, hey, you got to try this stuff. This is not that. This is singular and it's unique and it's adventurous, but it's also very drinkable. Maybe it's just me and my palate. Maybe it's just where I grew up and sort of the memories that it evokes. But for me, this is something that I absolutely on a weekday would just reach for and pour an ounce of it, every now and then, be like, yeah, I'm in the mood for an ounce of that. 100%. I think my two favorite products I've had from them so far are the Red Ryder Rye and the Black Hammer. That Fence Jumper, though, is, I think, a wonderful introduction to their profile that's unique to them. That'd be a great way to sort of just introduce your palate to it and then go from there. Something about their profile that makes me think people who are from or visit or like Kansas City and Texas culture, I think you would vibe with this too. A lot of their flavor profile just screams pit smoked barbecue beans, brisket, burn ends, all of it. This right here, I think this would go so well with a good southern barbecue. A sort of Texarkana area, I think would really vibe with this, not just the Midwesterners. But there you have it. That's Rockfilter. If you have by any chance had any of their stuff, let me know in the comment section what you think about it. If you have not had any of their stuff and you're looking for something else to add to your shelf and you're tired of the same old, you're tired of just going to the grocery store and seeing the exact same options every week after week after week, and you're like, I've had that bottle 8, 9, 10, a dozen times on my shelf. I want something maybe a little bit different, but it's also really good. Go online. Nobody on the secondary is upcharging for Rockfilter bottles. So if you see them, add them to your cart, check out, get it delivered to you, and give it a fair shake. Hopefully you learned something new about the distillery today, and maybe you developed a better appreciation for who these people are and what they're doing. And really, I hope that you try some of their stuff out. If you end up trying any of their stuff out, please do me a favor, circle back to this video. Let me know in the comments section what you got and what you thought. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, genuinely appreciate each and every one of you, especially Dan Thrice, who is local to Rockfilter, who's been sending me a lot of their stuff. Really appreciate that as well. And a big shout out to my Patreon supporters in general who help to fund all the bottles I get to pick up and review here on the channel. We got a lot of cool stuff coming this week. I've got a bottle of Stag coming. I've got the latest batch of Bookers coming. I've got a Jack Daniel's 12-year coming. I got a bottle of Rockfilter's Red Ryder Rye coming. I got a lot of stuff coming. It's all thanks to you guys for funding it. I appreciate you all. Hey, get involved in our Discord. Introduce yourself. Link is in the description. Totally free to join. We got a great community of great people. Get in there. Introduce yourself. We'd love to meet you. Cheers, my friends. May you live richly and get better with age. And I look forward to catching you in the next one. Bye-bye.